I'm Francesca D'Amore, and let's queer up trans rights. Oregon officials to pay $295,000 to a trans woman who alleged abuse while housed in a men's prison. Zera Lola Zombie, 41, filed the lawsuit in 2021, citing harassment, forced searches, and alleged sexual assault during her time at Two Rivers Correctional Institute in Eastern Oregon. She later transferred to Coffee Creek Correctional Facility, a women's prison. Zombie, who is serving a sentence through 2049 after a manslaughter and assault conviction, transitioned while incarcerated around 2020. According to court filings, she experienced, quote, ongoing harassment and verbal, mental, and psychological abuse by both prisoners and staff as a result of her sex, gender, and gender identity, end quote. In 2023, U.S. District Judge Ann Aiken ruled Zombie was likely repeatedly subjected to abuse, including sexual assault, and ordered protective measures. These included halting cavity searches and preventing exposure to other inmates and staff. Court filings also allege guards paraded her in undergarments, conducted strip searches, and forced her to provide urine samples in front of staff. Zombie said she was terrorized by a cellmate, but told to get over it by a guard. The Oregon Department of Corrections settled the case this week, awarding $95,000 to Zombie with $200,000 allocated to attorneys. This case comes as courts and policymakers continue grappling with how transgender inmates are housed amid shifting federal policies on gender identity and prison care. For me, this is a really scary story to even have to read and report. I can't imagine being placed in a men's prison. Of course you're going to be harassed. Of course you're going to be raped. Of course you're going to be subject to all of that. And with all of the laws that are changing at the federal level and at some state levels, it's a scary time for trans inmates, you know. I'm glad that she did win. It sets sort of a precedence, which is a good thing. But we'll see where it goes from here.
Yeah, I just look at how many times have we seen stories about inmates of prisons, regardless of transgender or not, but because of the way the guards acted, the way, you know, it's like they're the ones that's supposed to keep the peace, but it seems like they're the ones that are creating the nightmares.
Yeah. Well, you know, alluding to what you said, prison is not really known for upholding anybody's dignity, gay, straight, cis, trans, whatever. But I'm glad that a line is being drawn in this. I think it's an important distinction to note that she is in a state prison, because at a federal prison, she'd probably be in a men's prison, and everybody would be saying, who cares? So I'm glad to see that a line has been drawn. And the fact is, it's hard to feel sorry for someone who's a convicted violent criminal who has killed someone. But I think isn't that what we're called to do? Is to look at everybody, no matter what they did, with a certain amount of compassion, even if they are, let's be honest, probably a bad person in general. So I'm glad to see that this person is going to get a level of justice, because she's in the justice system.
Right. So my viewpoint on this is that, as you all were saying, everybody's rights when you're a prisoner seem to get trampled on in our American prison system. And there are other prison systems that, you know, I'm not just saying just America, but I feel like, you know, in the first world, you know, we incarcerate so many people, and our inmates come out worse than they were when they went in. So they're, particularly in men's prisons, it's not rehabilitative. It is just, it's like an animal house. And if you've seen any documentaries on this, it's like, this is inhumane, the way that people are treated. So I'm sure there are tons of men who are not transgendered, who are raped, and, you know, all of this goes on. So I feel like in her case, that she probably won her case, not necessarily because of the trans issue, but because she could prove that she was actually sexually assaulted and mistreated in some way, which probably she made the case more than anybody else. Like, maybe other inmates are not really suing. They just accept that this is how it is when you're locked up in the big house, you know? I also have kind of an issue with, so I think that it said that she transitioned while she was in prison, right? So she went in male, I don't know what you can have done while you're in prison to make you more physically female. I mean, maybe they would have given her hormones to grow
Perhaps
breasts,
hormones,
you know?
yeah.
So then when she's saying that they paraded me around and did cavity surgery just like everybody else. Like, so you weren't being treated differently than other people. You were just feeling more sensitive about it now because maybe you started growing breasts or something like that. So that, to me, is not really an issue. However, when it comes to trans people being in jail or in prison, I do think that there is a level of common sense, I would say, that, and maybe it goes with passability. I think if there's a reasonable expectation that the inmates are going to treat you or see you as a woman, then you should go to a female prison. I think if you look just like a male and you hadn't transitioned or anything like that, then you would go to a male prison. So I think there's a little bit of a gray area. I know you know
I
this
think
more,
it's
but I do
interesting.
think that there's a passive. Nobody wants to talk about passability, but I think passability is a big part of the conversation, and when it comes to public spaces or like
I agree.
bathrooms or things like
And
that.
there are different spectrums of trans people and transitioning. So before I physically transitioned, I considered myself trans, even though I didn't present the way I present now. So it's an internal thing. So psychologically, it's going to affect that person very different from somebody who doesn't see themselves as the opposite gender that they were born at birth. So it's a bit jarring, and I do agree, everybody gets treated that way. But if you are a minority and it's known, you're going to get bullied. And I know this from the real world we live in, you know, so it's no different there than it is out here in the real world. So I get it.
Yeah, I think that the prison guards or the prison system has a duty to keep you every single person protected from
Correct.
that. Well,
Correct. Agreed.
Well, there's no other queer nonprofit media platform like this in the entire world. Support our LGBTQ stories by sharing them and subscribing to Queer News Tonight.